The day my own family laughed at me in Grandma's living room, I realized I was the only one in the house who actually loved her. My name is Martin Keller, I'm 55, and back then I thought I understood life, money, pride, responsibility. Turns out I didn't know a damn thing. I used to tease my Grandma Eloise about her old ways. Her handwritten letters, her rotary phone that rang like a fire alarm. That dusty little rolodex she spun with a crooked finger, full of names I figured belonged to people long dead. I thought it was harmless joking. I thought she didn't mind. But those same old-school habits, those connections I assumed were useless, ended up blowing apart the inheritance fight between me and my brother Derek. I can still feel the sting of sitting at holiday dinners while everyone whispered about how I never amounted to much. The sideways looks, the smirks, the constant reminder that Derek was the successful one. What I didn't know was that Grandma had a network: sheriffs, bankers, retired judges, people who owed her favors from decades ago. And when Derek tried to shove her into a nursing home, I stood by her, even though I once mocked the very things that protected her. So how did an 82-year-old woman with a flip phone outsmart a house full of modern adults? The answer started the day Derek tried to steal her will. I shouldn't have laughed, but the sight of her spinning that cracked Rolodex made me snort out loud. The thing looked older than me: yellowed tabs, bent metal frame, one leg held up by a wad of folded napkin. Grandma Eloise sat at the head of the table, turning it with that slow, deliberate motion she used for everything these days. It was her 82nd birthday, and the whole family had crammed into her living room. Derek strutted around like he owned the place, even though he hadn't mowed her lawn once in the last decade. Paige hovered beside him, wearing a smile that was about as real as her eyelashes. Derek clapped me on the back. "Still driving that old truck, Marty? What year is it now, 2000-something? "It runs," I said. "If this story caught your heart, make sure to hit subscribe so we keep bringing you stories that dig deep into truth, guilt, and redemption. And don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We read them all, and your words keep us going." He smirked. "So do hamsters." Paige leaned in toward him, but loud enough for me to hear. "He really should learn from successful people." I bit my tongue. I'd learned a long time ago that giving them a reaction only encouraged more. Grandma kept spinning the Rolodex, her eyes narrowed behind those thick glasses. "I know it's in here somewhere," she muttered. I chuckled again. "Gran, I can just look up whoever you're trying to call. Takes 2 seconds." She paused, her thin fingers resting on a faded card. Then she looked at me softly, almost sadly. The kind of look that makes you straighten up without knowing why. "Some things aren't meant to be found on a screen, Martin." I shrugged, pretending I didn't feel that little sting of guilt. "Sure, Grandma, whatever you say." Derek clinked his fork against a glass to get everyone's attention. "Before we cut the cake, I'd like to announce a little milestone." He puffed up like a peacock. "My newest investment property in Naples doubled in value this year." Paige gasped theatrically. "Derek, stop, you'll embarrass everyone else." Everyone laughed, even a few cousins who should have known better. I picked at my slice of carrot cake, pretending the room didn't feel 20 degrees warmer. Then Grandma tugged a card free from the Rolodex. The paper was old, stiff, and the ink had faded to a soft blue. But even from across the table, I saw what was printed on it: a sheriff's star. She said under her breath. "There you are." Derek frowned. "Grandma, why do you still have that thing?" "It reminds me of who I can count on," she replied. Something in her voice shifted the room. Paige's smile faltered. Derek's eyebrows knit together. I leaned in. "Who's that belong to?" Grandma set the card down gently, almost reverently. "Old friend, old ways keep you safe when new ways fail." I didn't get what she meant. None of us did. We shrugged it off, returning to the cake and the small talk and Derek's bragging. But then a firm knock rattled the front door. Everyone froze. Grandma didn't look surprised. She didn't even blink. "Well," she said, folding her hands, "sounds like Jim's right on time." Derek scowled. "Jim who?" Before she could answer, the door creaked open and a tall man in a tan uniform stepped inside, hat tucked under his arm. Sheriff Dotson, and he wasn't smiling. When Sheriff Dotson hugged Grandma, Derek suddenly stopped smiling. It was subtle, his jaw tightened, the corners of his mouth twitched, and that smug confidence he'd been wearing all afternoon slipped just a little. Paige noticed too. She edged closer to him like she expected trouble. Sheriff Jim Dotson was tall in that old-school, broad-shouldered way. Silver hair, sun-tanned skin, uniform pressed sharp enough to cut paper. I'd only met him once or twice over the years, but Grandma greeted him like a favorite nephew. "Well, Eloise," he said, handing her a mason jar of something dark and sticky. "Emily made too many preserves this year. Figured I'd bring you a jar before Derek here eats 'em all." Derek laughed awkwardly. "We haven't seen you around in a while, Sheriff." Jim's eyes flicked to him quick, assessing. "Been busy." He turned back to Grandma. "You had any more trouble with those papers?" And just like that, the room's air changed. Derek's face went pale. Paige's hand shot to his arm. I looked around, confused. "What papers?" Grandma waved a hand. "Just nonsense, Martin, nothing to worry about." Jim didn't seem convinced. He stepped a bit closer to her chair. "You call me if anyone tries anything again, day or night. You know I'll handle it." Again, I blinked. What had happened the first time? Derek cleared his throat. "I am sure she's mistaken. You know how seniors—" The sheriff's head turned toward him so slowly it felt intentional. "Eloise Keller is the sharpest mind in this neighborhood." Don't finish that sentence. Paige gave a tiny wheeze like she'd swallowed wrong. I tried to diffuse the tension. "Hey, Sheriff, you want some cake? We've got plenty left." He nodded politely, "Maybe in a minute." But his focus stayed on Grandma, protective, steady. They chatted for a while about town events, about people I didn't know, about some old church picnic from the 80s. Every now and then, Jim glanced at Derek like he was watching a fox circle a henhouse. Eventually, he said his goodbyes. He squeezed Grandma's shoulder before leaving. "You know how to reach me, don't hesitate." When the door closed, Derek finally exhaled. Paige rubbed his back like he'd been through a marathon. Grandma pretended not to notice their reaction. "Martin, help me to the kitchen a moment." I followed her down the narrow hallway. She moved slow these days, but her voice was firm. "Someone tried to get me to sign papers I didn't understand. Sheriff Jim told them to leave." I frowned. "Some kind of scam, telemarketers." She didn't answer right away. "People can be pushy when they think you're old." I nodded sympathetically, not realizing how naive I sounded. "Just ignore them, Grandma. I'll block anyone who bothers you." Her eyes softened. "I know you mean well." I didn't understand the weight behind her words, not yet. Later that night, as I stepped outside to get some air, I heard voices near Derek's car. Derek was hunched close to Paige, whispering harshly, "We need to get her signature before she slips up again." My heart thudded. They weren't talking about telemarketers. Derek slid a glossy brochure across the table like he was offering a vacation package. The front showed some smiling seniors tossing a beach ball in a spotless courtyard. The kind of picture that looked staged enough to make your teeth hurt. "It's called Willow Ridge Transitional Living," Derek said, tapping the brochure with one manicured finger. "State-of-the-art, clean, safe, exactly what Mom," he corrected himself quickly. "What Grandma needs right now." Grandma's shoulders stiffened. She didn't touch the brochure. She didn't even look at it. Paige appeared beside him as if on cue, holding a clipboard with crisp white papers. "We went ahead and printed the intake forms," she said sweetly, "just to make it easier." I didn't like the way she said easier. It reminded me of how a vet talks when they're trying to coax a nervous animal into a carrier. "Hold on," I said. "Why are we talking about a care facility? Grandma's been living here just fine." Derek sighed as if I were slow. "Martin, be reasonable. She's 82, she forgets things, she gets confused, she's not mentally capable anymore. We need to do the responsible thing." Grandma's hands tightened on her lap, her jaw twitched, a tiny movement, but for a woman as polite as her, it was practically shouting. "I'm capable enough to know when someone's trying to push me," she said quietly. Derek pretended he hadn't heard. It's not pushing, it's protecting. We all want what's best for you. I looked at her, then at the glossy brochure. I tried to picture her sitting in that staged courtyard wearing one of those knitted cardigans they hand out at facilities. The image didn't fit. Still, a flicker of doubt pricked me. Maybe she was slowing down. Maybe she did need more help. Paige must have seen the hesitation cross my face. "Martin," she cooed, "you of all people should understand. You don't have the space or money to care for her. Derek and I are just trying to take the burden off you." Burden, that word felt sour in my mouth. Grandma leaned slightly toward me, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't let them box me in." The way she said it, fear hidden inside dignity, made something twist in my chest. Derek clicked a pen open. "All she needs to do is sign right here at the bottom. I've already filled out the medical history." "You filled it out?" I asked. "Well, yes, someone has to." He pushed the clipboard toward me like he expected me to endorse it. Grandma kept staring at the table, but then I saw it, one tear sliding down her cheek, quick and silent. She wiped it away before anyone else noticed, but I caught it. And suddenly, I didn't feel clueless anymore. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. "I'm not signing anything today," Grandma said, "and I'm not moving." Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We'll talk about it again tomorrow." He gathered the forms, annoyed, and Paige followed him out, whispering furiously. I was still trying to process everything when my phone buzzed in my pocket. "Unknown number," I answered. A calm female voice said, "Martin Keller, this is Lydia Reeves, your grandmother's attorney. We need to meet privately as soon as possible." Lydia dropped a folder on the cafe table. "Your brother is staging a takeover." I blinked. "Come again." She slid into the seat across from me with the calm confidence of someone who had already seen every type of family disaster. Her dark hair was pulled back, blazer crisp, eyes sharp enough to cut through any lie. "Derek," she said, tapping the folder, "has been pushing your grandmother to revise her will. Aggressively. He's trying to transfer her property to himself under something called a caregiving clause. And yes," she raised a hand before I could interrupt, "it's just as sleazy as it sounds." I felt my stomach tighten. "He told me he was just worried about her health," Lydia chuckled dryly. "Your brother wouldn't worry about someone's health unless it affected his tax bracket." She opened the folder, "and he's sloppy, very sloppy." Inside were copies of documents, amateur-looking revisions filled out in Derek's handwriting. Several had blank signature lines with sticky notes reading, "Sign here, Grandma." I felt heat rise in my face. "She didn't sign any of this, right?" "No." Lydia's expression softened. "Thanks to Sheriff Dotson, actually. He showed up during one of Derek's attempts." "Your grandmother never told you." I shook my head. Shame washed over me. Here I'd been making jokes about her rolodex while she'd been fending off her own grandson. Lydia pulled out another sheet. "Take a look." It was a letter written in Grandma's careful cursive, steady, elegant, not a hint of confusion or decline. Lydia pointed to the date. "6 months ago," she said. "She wrote that to me after your mother passed. She was updating some estate matters." Lydia leaned forward. "Your grandmother is not losing her mind. She's not signing anything she doesn't understand, and she knows exactly what Derek is trying to do." I swallowed hard. She never told me she updated things. She didn't want to cause conflict unless she had to. Lydia hesitated, then added, "Martin, she named you as her preferred executor years ago, long before Derek started circling." The words hit me like a weight. "Me, yes, you, she trusts your judgment. She said you value people over appearances." That made me think of every time I'd laughed at her old habits. Suddenly those moments felt cruel, small. Lydia continued, "Derek has been trying to change that designation. If he gains legal control, he could move her into a facility, sell her property, and tie up the estate so you get nothing." A coldness spread through my chest. "She never wanted this for you," Lydia added, "but she's running out of ways to stop him quietly." I stared at the folder, at Derek's messy handwriting, at Grandma's perfect cursive. At the realization of how blind I'd been. What do we do? I asked. We prepare, Lydia said, and we stay one step ahead. She closed the folder, but first I need you to be honest. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. Martin, do you trust your brother? The question landed like a punch. I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out. Derek stood and tapped his glass, ready to embarrass me in front of everyone. He always did this, waited until the whole Keller clan was gathered, plates full, mouths busy, so no one could interrupt him while he delivered whatever self-serving speech he had prepped. Before we carve the turkey, Derek announced, I'd like to acknowledge someone at this table who struggles every year financially. Every fork paused midair, my stomach sank. Here we go, Paige placed a hand over her heart in fake sympathy. It's brave of Martin to keep trying, she said softly, then looked at me with a sugar-sweet smile. Even without children or a legacy to pass anything down to, you really don't give up. A few cousins shifted in their seats, uncomfortable. Others hid smirks behind their napkins. I forced myself to breathe. Can we just eat? But Derek was enjoying himself too much. Martin, he said, wagging a finger, if you'd made wiser investments instead of clinging to that rust bucket truck, Derek. Grandma's voice cut through the room like a blade. He ignored her, lifting his wine glass. Anyway, since some of us aren't exactly equipped to handle elder care, I'm proud to say Grandma will be transitioning soon. Transitioning, I repeated. What does that mean? Derek beamed, pleased to have the spotlight to a care facility, a very nice one, top tier. She'll be moving as soon as paperwork is finalized. I felt heat rush to my face. She hasn't agreed to that. Paige leaned toward the relatives at her end of the table. He gets emotional, she whispered loudly. It's why he can't make good decisions. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood. You two don't get to make choices for her. Derek scoffed. Someone has to, she's slipping. Grandma's fork clattered against her plate. Everyone turned. Her eyes were wet, not with confusion, but with disappointment at all of us, maybe at me most of all. I sat down slowly, ashamed I hadn't defended her sooner. Dinner resumed in awkward silence, the only sounds being clinking silverware and Paige's occasional dramatic sigh. I could feel Derek's satisfaction radiating like heat from a stove. Eventually, Grandma reached under the table and placed her hand on my forearm. Her grip was surprisingly firm. Come early tomorrow, she whispered. Alone, I looked at her, confused. Why, there's something of yours I've kept hidden, she murmured. You need to see it. A chill crawled up my spine, hidden, mine. What had she been protecting? Before I could ask more, she withdrew her hand and returned to eating as if nothing had happened. The evening dragged on until dishes were washed and leftover pies wrapped. Family members drifted out with coats and casserole dishes, offering stiff goodbyes. I slipped out the side door, not wanting another round of Derek's commentary. The night air felt cold and clean after hours of tension. I had just stepped onto the porch when a voice stopped me. Paige, she leaned against the railing, lips curled in a smug half-smile. You know, she said softly, Derek and I have everything under control. You won't be inheriting anything. She walked back inside before I could answer. Her words hung in the quiet like smoke. She pressed a brittle brass key into my palm. It was small, scratched, and colder than it should have been, like it had spent years hiding somewhere dark. Grandma didn't say a word as she led me down the hallway toward her bedroom, moving slow but certain, the way someone walks when they've rehearsed it in their mind 1,000 times. You came early, she said quietly. You asked me to. Her lips twitched into a tired smile. Good, it's time. We stopped beside her old cedar dresser. I must have seen it 100 times growing up, but today she reached behind it and felt along the back panel like she was searching for a heartbeat. After a moment, a soft click echoed through the room. A hidden drawer slid open. I leaned in, breath catching. Inside were envelopes tied with faded string, black and white photos, and thick documents wrapped in wax paper. Everything smelled like old paper and cedar oil, history sealed in wood. These are pieces of my life, Grandma murmured, pieces most people never saw. She handed me the first bundle of letters. The handwriting varied, some elegant, some hurried, but the signatures leapt out: pastors, school board presidents, business owners, each one thanking her for stepping in during some crisis I had never heard of. She kept order in this town before some folks ever thought to, one letter said. Another praised her for upholding fairness when others were too afraid. I stared at her. Why didn't you ever tell anyone about this? Because good deeds don't need an audience, she said. But they do need to be remembered by someone who won't twist them. Shame prickled the back of my neck. I thought of every time I'd chuckled at her rolodex, every joke I'd made about her old ways. Meanwhile, she'd been quietly shaping people's lives. She passed me a photograph next. A much younger grandma stood beside a governor from the 70s, shaking hands at what looked like a county event. She wasn't timid or frail. She stood tall, confident, steady. I helped him settle a dispute, she said. He never forgot. I swallowed hard. I had no idea who she used to be. Then she lifted out a heavy envelope and placed it on my lap. Open it. Inside was a property deed, acres of land. My name wasn't on it, but hers was, and I'd never heard a whisper about it. What is this? Land that belonged to my parents, she said. Derek tried to sell it once, told the buyers I was forgetful and wouldn't notice. Sheriff Dotson shut that down. My fists clenched. He tried to steal from you. He tried to steal from us, she corrected softly. Because this land was always meant for family who understood its value. Her eyes met mine, clear, unshaken. I've been waiting, she said, for you to grow into a protector, someone who doesn't just love me but respects what came before him. Those words hit harder than Derek's insults ever had. All my mocking, all my ignorance, it felt like dust on my hands. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know, she replied. Now we move forward. She closed the hidden drawer and took the deed from my hands. We need to visit the bank, she said, her voice low but firm. Today. Calvin Moore stood when Grandma walked in like greeting royalty, not politely, not out of habit. With genuine respect, the kind of gesture that comes from knowing someone's worth long before the world catches up. Eloise, he said warmly, stepping around his mahogany desk. You should have told me you were coming. I'd have cleared the whole morning. I don't need special treatment, Grandma said. That's exactly why you deserve it. He pulled out a chair for her, then nodded at me. Martin, good to finally talk with you. Finally, I didn't even know he knew my name. His office smelled like old books and polished wood, quiet, expensive, secure. The kind of place Derek probably thought he owned the rights to. But Calvin's attention stayed on Grandma, not on bank balances or business deals. So, Calvin said gently, what brings you in today? Grandma looked at me. Martin needs context. Calvin folded his hands. All right then. He opened a locked drawer and pulled out a thick folder. My name was printed across the front. My breath hitched. Why is my name on anything here? Because Eloise has trusted you longer than you realize, Calvin said. You appear on several confidential documents, quiet roles, not legally binding yet, but significant. I gripped the armrests. I don't understand. Calvin smiled at Grandma. He's honest. You were right. Then he turned back to me. Your grandmother has a reputation in this town, steel backbone, impeccable ethics. People listen when she speaks, so when she told me years ago to prepare contingency plans involving you, I took it seriously. I tried to absorb that, but my mind snagged on the next question. Does Derek know? Calvin exhaled slowly. He suspected, enough to make unwise decisions. Grandma's jaw tightened. Tell him. Calvin opened another folder, this one slimmer. Your brother attempted to access accounts that were never his. He tried to claim he was acting as a caregiver with financial authority. Fortunately, the sheriff and I communicate regularly. I felt heat rising under my collar. He tried to steal from you again. Calvin nodded. He was shut down immediately. I couldn't shake the weight of everything I'd missed. While I'd been laughing at Grandma's Rolodex, she'd been fighting quiet wars on multiple fronts. Martin, Calvin said, voice steady, your grandmother's integrity is known in every corner of this county, but even integrity needs a successor, someone who won't fold under pressure or be dazzled by shortcuts. I swallowed hard. Are you saying she wants me to? Grandma reached for my hand. You were always meant to lead with heart, not ego. I needed you to grow into that. A tight ache formed behind my ribs. I didn't feel worthy of any of this. Not yet. Calvin closed the folder and slid it toward me. She's already transferred something into your name, a protective measure, partial, not full control. Think of it as a trial of character. My fingers hovered over the folder. What do I have to do? Prove you can be trusted, Calvin said simply. Stand firm, not back down when things get ugly. Before I could respond, the glass door to Calvin's office slammed open so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. Derek stormed inside, face red, breathing hard. What the hell is going on here? Derek pointed at me like I'd stolen something. His hand shook, his face blotched red, and every person in the bank lobby turned to watch the spectacle unfold. I could almost hear the whispers forming. There he is, Derek shouted, manipulating our grandmother behind my back. I stepped away from Calvin's office doorway, palms open. Derek, calm down, don't you dare, he snapped. You think you can slip in here and pull strings, get access to accounts you have no business touching. People shifted uncomfortably. A teller froze mid-stamp, eyes wide. An older man with a cane slowly backed toward the exit. Paige barreled in next, heels clacking against the marble floor. She jabbed a finger at me. He's preying on an old woman. It's disgusting. My blood surged, but Grandma spoke before I could. Her voice, though quiet, cut through the lobby like a knife. No one is preying on me. Derek spun toward her. Grandma, please, you don't understand what he's doing. I understand perfectly, she replied. Martin is helping me. A hush fell. For a moment, even Derek's mouth stopped moving. I stepped closer to her. You don't need to defend me, Grandma. She squeezed my arm. I'm defending the truth. Derek let out a bitter laugh. Truth, you think she knows what's going on, Martin. She's 82. Calvin emerged from his office with the calm of a man who'd handled 1,000 panicked customers. That's enough, he said firmly. Eloise knows exactly what she's doing, and your outburst is inappropriate. Derek whirled around. Stay out of this, Calvin. This is a family matter. Calvin's expression didn't change. This is also a legal matter, and you've already crossed lines you shouldn't have. Paige gasped dramatically. Is that a threat? It's a fact, Calvin replied. I could feel all eyes swinging between us, the room feeding off the tension. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay steady. Derek wanted a scene. Paige wanted tears. I wasn't giving either. Derek, I said, stepping forward, no one is taking anything from you. I'm trying to help Grandma, something you should have been doing instead of manipulating her. His face darkened. Manipulating, I'm trying to protect her future. By forcing her into a nursing home she doesn't want. I shot back. She needs guidance. She needs respect, I said, and she hasn't been getting that from you. A few people murmured agreements under their breath. Derek heard them, his rage ignited. That's it, he snarled. If you and she keep pushing me out, I'll take this to court. I'll challenge everything, the will, the accounts, all of it. Grandma's chin lifted. You do what you think you must, but understand this. Your grandfather didn't leave you entitlement. He left you opportunity. You wasted it. The words hit him so hard he physically recoiled. Paige tugged at his sleeve. Derek, let's go. We'll deal with them legally. He straightened, glaring at me with newfound hatred. This isn't over. I braced myself for the next blow, but then a deep voice echoed from behind him. Oh, I think it might be. Derek froze. Sheriff Dotson stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching everything. Sheriff Dotson didn't yell. He didn't need to. His presence alone lowered the temperature of the bank lobby by 10 degrees. Derek stiffened like someone had just dropped a hand on the back of his neck. Sheriff, Derek said, trying to keep his voice steady, this is a misunderstanding. Dotson stepped forward, boots echoing against the marble. Funny. That's what people usually say right before things stop being misunderstandings. Paige's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her confidence drained faster than a bathtub with no stopper. "I've received complaints," Sheriff Dotson said, fixing his eyes on Derek. "More than one. Folks saying you've been pressuring your grandmother to sign documents she didn't understand." Derek's voice cracked. "Complaints? From who?" "Neighbors," Dotson replied. "A mail carrier, even someone walking their dog, says they saw you show up over and over carrying folders, trying to corner Eloise when she was alone." My stomach dropped. I remembered seeing Derek's car in her driveway in the middle of the day, brushing it off, assuming he was doing something good for once. I felt the weight of my own blindness tighten around my ribs. "Sheriff," Paige said weakly, "we were just looking out for her. People exaggerate." "No," Dotson said, "people observe." His gaze sharpened. "And I've been observing this family for a long time." Derek swallowed hard. You can't interfere with family decisions." Dotson took one slow step closer. "But I can interfere when those decisions become criminal: elder coercion, intent to defraud, attempted exploitation." He listed each word like he was placing heavy stones on a table. A gasp rippled through the lobby. Paige tugged at Derek's sleeve. "Say something." But for once, Derek couldn't form a sentence. The sheriff turned to Grandma. "Eloise, you doing okay?" Grandma nodded, calm despite the storm around her. "I am now, Jim." Dotson tipped his hat slightly, then looked at me. "You're stepping up, about time." The words landed harder than any scolding. He wasn't wrong. While Derek had been scheming, I'd been standing on the sidelines, waiting for things to fix themselves. I clenched my jaw. "I should have been paying more attention." "Maybe," Dotson said, "but you're here now, that counts." Derek finally snapped out of his silence. "This is ridiculous. Martin is filling her head with lies. He's trying to turn her against me." Grandma didn't flinch. "You turned yourself away, Derek, long before Martin ever said a word." He shook his head furiously. "I'm her oldest grandchild. I'm supposed to handle her affairs." "Well," Dotson replied, "you handled them poorly." A few quiet chuckles rose from the people watching. Paige shot them a venomous glare. Derek pointed at me again. "He doesn't deserve anything." Dotson's brows lifted. "Funny you say that now, considering Eloise already set things in motion long before any of this." His tone grew softer. "She's protected that boy since he was knee-high, more than he knows." I blinked, startled. "Protected me from what?" Dotson didn't answer directly. Instead, he glanced at Grandma with a knowing look. "Some things ain't mine to reveal." My heart pounded. What had happened? What didn't I know? Grandma placed a gentle hand on my arm, guiding me toward the door. "It's time for the truth," she whispered. Grandma placed a thick envelope in my hands. It was heavy in a way paper shouldn't be, heavy like consequence, like history. We sat together at her kitchen table, the same one where she used to serve me peanut butter sandwiches after school. Now it felt like the setting of a confession. "Go on," she said, "open it." My fingers shook as I slid the clasp free. Inside were neatly stacked documents, old photographs, handwritten notes, and a ledger filled with names I didn't recognize. What is all this?" "My life's work," she said simply. "Not money, not property, relationships, favors earned the slow way." I lifted a faded sheet with signatures at the bottom. "City council members, church leaders, business owners. You built all this?" I asked. She nodded. "I helped people when they had nowhere else to turn. A loan here, a reference there, a letter on the right desk. I kept no debt books, but folks remembered. They still do." I sat back, stunned. I had never imagined Grandma wielding that kind of quiet influence. I'd thought she lived a small, humble life. But she'd built a network stronger than any fortune Derek bragged about. She studied my face. "I was afraid you'd reject all this. Your generation moves fast, chases shiny things. I worried you'd mock these connections the same way you mocked my Rolodex." Guilt washed over me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't understand." "I know," she said gently. "Understanding takes time." She reached into the envelope again and withdrew another folder, newer paper, crisp edges. "This," she said, "you must see." When I opened it, my breath left my body. Bank statements. Transfers, copies of signatures that didn't look quite right, all pointing to one person, Derek. What did he do? My voice cracked. He funneled family funds, she said quietly. Small sums at first, then larger, always to shell accounts, always under the guise of managing affairs. He counted on me not noticing. My chest tightened until it hurt. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't ready, she said. You were still trying to keep the peace, still believing the best of him. I swallowed, hard, eyes burning. You shouldn't have faced this alone. I wasn't alone. She reached across the table and touched my wrist. I had faith that you would grow into the man your grandfather hoped you'd be. That broke me. Tears hit the table before I could stop them. She squeezed my hand. You've always had a good heart, Martin. I needed to see if you'd use it. I wiped my face, shaking. What happens now? She pulled out one final document, a trust agreement with my name printed on the front. My estate is more than land, she said. It includes this trust, managed by people I trust more than lawyers or courts. My old school network. They'll stand with you if things turn ugly. A shiver ran through me. Ugly how? Derek will not accept the truth peacefully. She closed the envelope and pushed it toward me, which means the next choice is yours. I looked into her steady, unafraid eyes. She spoke softly, but the weight of her words filled the whole room. Now you must decide if you'll confront your brother or walk away. As I walked into Grandma's living room holding the folder like it was dynamite. The air was already tight, Derek pacing near the window, Paige perched on the couch pretending to dab her eyes, and Grandma sitting in her favorite armchair, hands folded, gaze lowered. Lydia Reeves stood beside her, cool and composed, like she'd handled 1,000 family implosions before breakfast. Derek spotted the folder and scoffed. Oh look, Martin brought props. This isn't theater, I said, setting the folder on the coffee table. We need to talk. Paige gasped dramatically. Why are you attacking us? We're just trying to help the family. I ignored her and opened the folder. I pulled out the bank statements first, then the copies of the forged signatures, the shell account transfers, the timeline Calvin had prepared. Derek, I said quietly, I know what you did. His jaw tightened. I didn't do anything, really, Lydia said, sliding a document forward. Because this signature here, it doesn't match Eloise's handwriting at the time. And the date conveniently lines up with your attempt to access the Jenkins Trust account. That's a coincidence, Derek snapped. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Is it also a coincidence that the shell account receiving the transfers was opened using your office address? Paige put a hand to her chest. This is harassment. No, I said sharply, this is evidence. Derek jabbed a finger at the papers. These are misunderstandings. Martin doesn't know what he's looking at. You're twisting things. Lydia calmly rearranged the documents, sliding them into a neat row. Nothing here is twisted. The transfers are clear. The intent is clear. The forgery very clear. Grandma still hadn't spoken. Her silence felt heavier than anger. I turned to her. Grandma, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. She nodded once, eyes shimmering, but she still didn't speak. It was like hearing the truth aloud was too painful. Derek crossed his arms. So this is it. You're all teaming up against me. You're believing him over me. Derek, Lydia said gently, this isn't about belief. It's about verifiable actions. Paige sprang to her feet. You can't talk to him that way. We've sacrificed so much helping Eloise. Helping, I repeated. Is that what you call trying to force her into a nursing home so you could sell her land? Paige's expression flickered, rage, then fear, then the thin mask she always wore. We were protecting her. No, Lydia replied, you were isolating her. Derek slammed his hand on the table, making the documents jump. Enough, you think you've cornered me with a few pages of paper. Mom, he caught himself. Grandma, tell them this is all a mistake. Tell them you weren't coerced. Finally, Grandma lifted her tear-filled eyes. Her voice, when it came, was soft but firm. Derek, I trusted you and you broke that trust. Derek staggered back like she'd struck him. Lydia opened another folder. One more thing. She slid it toward him. This signature here, the one on the asset transfer form. It was proven by a handwriting analyst to be forged. By you, Derek's face drained of color. Page stumbled backward, clutching his arm. I thought he might crumble. Instead, he exploded. I'm contesting the will. He screamed, voice cracking. The room went dead silent. You could hear Page's earrings jangling from how fast she turned her head. The attorney's conference room was quiet enough to pick up every nervous twitch, every breath, every shifting shoe. Lydia sat at the head of the long oak table, the sealed will in front of her like a loaded weapon. Derek leaned back in his chair with a smug, relaxed smile, as if the last week of revelations, accusations, and near-criminal findings had never happened. Paige sat beside him, legs crossed, face stiff with anticipation. She kept glancing at the door like paparazzi might burst in to capture her victory pose. I sat on the opposite side, hands folded tightly. My stomach churned. Even after everything Grandma had shown me, even after all the trust and the documents and the truth, I still half expected to walk out of here with nothing. Old habits of doubt die slow. Grandma sat between us, frail but composed, dressed in her favorite blue cardigan. She didn't look at Derek, she didn't look at me either. Her gaze rested on Lydia, calm as if she'd made peace with whatever storm this meeting would bring. Lydia cleared her throat. We are here to read the last will and testament of Eloise Margaret Keller, executed according to state statute. I will read it as written. Paige clasped her hands together with a bright, rehearsed smile. Derek smirked. I braced. Lydia began. To my family I leave these words. Love without duty is hollow. Duty without love is destructive. Paige blinked. Derek frowned slightly. Lydia continued, voice steady and deliberate. To my grandson Derek Keller I leave $1. The room froze. Paige's earrings jingled again as her head whipped toward Derek. His jaw dropped open. $1, he croaked. Lydia nodded. $1. Grandma didn't move, but I saw her shoulders sag. Relief, grief, or exhaustion, I couldn't tell. Lydia kept reading. This single dollar is a symbol of what unchecked ambition cost you. May it remind you that character outlasts wealth. Paige shot to her feet. This is an insult. She must have been confused. Lydia raised a hand without looking at her. Sit down. Paige froze, then slowly sank back into her chair. Derek sputtered, this is invalid. I was her primary caregiver. You were never her caregiver, Lydia said coolly. And this will is legally airtight, every step witnessed, every signature verified, every clause reviewed 3 times. Derek's face turned the color of wet clay. I swallowed hard, my pulse thudding in my ears. Why was Lydia taking so long? Why hadn't she reached my part yet? My chest tightened as the silence stretched. Then Lydia exhaled softly and lifted the final page. Now, she said, the bulk of the estate. The phrase made my spine straighten involuntarily. Derek sat forward, gripping the edge of the table. Paige mirrored him, breath shallow. Lydia read it slowly, one word at a time. The bulk of my estate goes to my grandson, Martin Keller. I froze. The room seemed to tilt. Paige gasped like she'd been stabbed. Derek slammed his palm on the table. What? Lydia didn't flinch. It is her final legal decision. My pulse roared in my ears. Grandma finally turned to look at me, soft, proud, sad, and everything changed in that moment. Then Sheriff Dotson and Calvin stepped forward like closing credits. It was surreal, like 2 pillars of the town had been waiting in the hallway for their cue. Derek stopped ranting mid-sentence when he saw them. Paige's eyes widened as if someone had just dimmed the lights on her performance. Lydia folded the will neatly and set it aside. We're not quite done here, she said. Sheriff Dotson tipped his hat toward Grandma Eloise. Calvin nodded respectfully. Afternoon, Derek sputtered. Why are they here? Because Eloise asked us to be, Calvin said calmly. Sheriff Dotson opened a folder of his own. And because you need to understand the consequences of what you've been trying to pull. Paige clutched Derek's arm, her voice tiny. Derek, maybe we should just… No, Derek snapped. I'm not backing down. Dotson's expression hardened. You may not have a choice. He pulled out a signed statement. This is from one of your grandmother's neighbors. Saw you showing up with documents 5 different times. Said Eloise looked distressed every single visit. Derek's face turned ashen. Calvin stepped in next, flipping open his ledger. "And here," he said, "are the bank logs, every unauthorized attempt you made to access her accounts. Times, dates, IP addresses, your office, your home, your phone." Paige let out a squeak. Derek looked like his lungs forgot how to work. Lydia clasped her hands together, almost gently. "You see, Derek, this isn't just a will reading. It's the final step in a long, deliberate process. Your grandmother planned every safeguard years ago." I turned to Grandma, stunned. "Years ago." She nodded, eyes steady. "People show you who they are early, Martin. Derek showed me when he tried to sell my land the first time." I swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you weren't ready," she said, "but I knew one day you would be." Lydia continued. Eloise updated her estate with multiple layers of protection, third-party oversight, witnesses from her network. Financial barriers Derek could never cross. Calvin closed his ledger, and even if he contests the will, the trust structure remains intact. He can't touch it. Sheriff Dotson added, "And he sure as hell can't touch her." Derek sank into his chair, deflated. Paige lowered her head, mascara trembling. For a moment the room felt impossibly still. Grandma reached into her handbag and pulled out a single page, folded neatly. She handed it to me. "This is the dignity clause," she said. I read the title and felt something tighten in my chest. It stated that any heir who attempted to manipulate, bully, coerce, or exploit her would automatically forfeit their inheritance, symbolically reduced to $1, and would be barred from contesting the will. My throat tightened. "Grandma, you wrote this for me." "No," she corrected gently. "I wrote it for everyone I loved, but only one of you earned it." Derek's head fell into his hands. Paige didn't move. Calvin and Dotson stepped back, their work complete, and Grandma turned to me, tired, proud, certain. Her voice was soft, but it carried more weight than anything said that day. "Tell me, Martin, do you still think my old ways are foolish? I used to think wisdom faded with age. Turns out it sharpens. It grows edges, it sees around corners. At 55, I thought I had life mostly figured out. Pay the bills, keep your head down, try your best, hope things sort themselves out. But Grandma showed me that wisdom isn't about age. It's about courage, patience, and knowing when to stand up even if your legs shake." After the will reading, everything quieted down faster than I expected. Derek and Paige disappeared from family events. No long explanations, no apologies, just absence, a silence they created for themselves. Maybe shame built the wall, maybe pride. Either way, I stopped trying to climb over it. My focus was on Grandma. I visited her every morning, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to share coffee at her kitchen table. She never asked for repayment for what she'd given me. She never mentioned the estate or the trust. She wanted conversation, company, respect. And for the first time, I gave her those things without resentment, without guilt, without feeling like I was coming up short. One afternoon, while sorting her mail, I found a small notebook tucked inside a drawer. Blank pages. Soft leather cover. She laughed when she saw me holding it. "Thought you could use a place to gather your thoughts," she said. "You've got more going on in that mind than you admit." So I started journaling, nothing fancy, just reflections, the way the light hit the porch, a conversation we had over tea, a lesson she'd mentioned casually that suddenly made sense days later. At first it felt old-fashioned, then it felt grounding, and then it felt necessary. I even wrote a few letters, handwritten, stamped, mailed. People were shocked to receive them. Some called me immediately touched. Others wrote back. Turns out the old ways create something an email never could. Her land, the property I never knew existed, became my new project. The soil hadn't been tended in years, but it wasn't ruined, just neglected. I spent weekends clearing brush, repairing fences, walking the boundaries she'd once patrolled herself. Something about restoring it made me feel like I was stitching together my own history. Every time I drove up that dirt road, I felt connected to her network, the sheriffs, the bankers, the neighbors she'd helped. People who still nodded at me like I belonged to something important because I did. Because she'd made sure I did. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the tree line, I asked her something that had been sitting on my chest for months. Grandma, why me? Why all this faith? She looked at me the way only an elder who's known you your entire life can. Because you never walked away from people who needed you. You just didn't know how to stand your ground yet. Now you do. She was right. Tradition isn't weakness, it's strategy. Love without respect destroys families, but love with loyalty saves them. And sometimes the strongest inheritance isn't land or money, it's the responsibility to protect what matters. When I finally sat down to record everything that happened, I ended with the same truth I'll tell anyone who'll listen. If you want more stories about family, truth, and justice, stick around. I've got plenty more to tell.